Welcome to the Peter King Podcast. So happy you can join me. I'm amazed to say that we are entering week 15 of the National Football League season. It always seems like you just get on this roller coaster at the start of the year, and by the time it dumps you off at the end, you're feeling a little queasy, a little tired, a little whatever. But man, you had a heck of a ride, and we're kind of on that same ride this year, Paul. And thanks so much for joining me. I hope everything is good in your world. I went to Cincinnati to see a football game over the weekend, had a good time, and we'll talk about that and a bunch of other things. Tell me how your life is going.
Everything's good. Trying to, just like everybody else this time of year, trying to be good at my job and also good to my kids at Christmas, and getting enough time to get out and do all the things that come with the holiday season while remembering to take care of everything that's important during the day. So it's a fun challenge. And it was a great weekend of football. I certainly missed college football on Saturday, but all the action yesterday made up for it.
I thought there were so many interesting games, and being in a game, I don't get to see everything that I would like to. I love sitting there and watching Red Zone, and I didn't have a chance to do that on Sunday in the press box in Cincinnati. But I think I must have missed some great, and I just watched the highlights. I must have missed some great football in Tampa, and with Buffalo coming back. And again, I'm not a big moral victories guy, but let's start there briefly, because as I say, I'm not a big moral victories kind of guy, but I find that when a team comes back from the brink and comes back after a short week against the defending Super Bowl champs on the road, Buffalo must have shown quite a lot in that second half.
Yeah, I'm with you, Peter. There aren't that many moral victories in the NFL, but when you watch the first half of that game and just how the Bills were not there offensively and defensively, and then how they were able to come back and show off Josh Allen and finally give him a little bit of help, tiny little bit of help with the running game, and how their defense was finally able to find a way to affect Tom Brady. It was hard to watch that second half and not feel good about what the Buffalo Bills were doing, and they desperately needed it, because the feeling was on the complete opposite end during that first half, because they just competitively were not around on either side of the ball.
Yeah. I should mention we're going to have a guest on later in the pod, Bill Polian, the Hall of Fame general manager. He's written a book about how to build a Super Bowl champion. It's got some really, really good interviews in the book with some all-timers like Joe Gibbs and Parcells. And I think he went into this book, as a matter of fact, I know he went into this book with an absolute open mind. He obviously built 3 teams in the NFL, but I think he wanted to know what he didn't know, and you'll get a kick out of that conversation. We had a good discussion, and we will listen to Bill Polian later on in the show. Paul, I want to just take you down for a moment. I want to take you down Peter King memory lane. My wife, Ann, and I, our first home was in Cincinnati. We bought a home in she thinks it's 82. I thought it was 81. But anyway, we bought a home in the early 80s in Cincinnati for $39,500. And and I love Cincinnati. There was so much going on. I remember early on, we lived next to an apartment complex where a bunch of the Reds lived. Ron Oster lived there, and a bunch of players would cycle in and out of there, so I'd see them all the time. But I really loved Cincinnati because it had all the sports, but it had a little bit more of the small town feel. So it was a great, great place to start my career. But one of the reasons I get sentimental going back there is that, my first job ever covering an NFL team was in Cincinnati in 1984. I worked for the Cincinnati Enquirer. I covered the Bengals. It was Sam Weich's rookie year, very imaginative head coach. And Cris Collinsworth was on that team. He used to use my phone. He and Boomer Esiason, who was a rookie quarterback that year, they would come into my room in the dorm where I would live during training camp. And because there was only 2 payphones in the whole dorm, and I was living in the players' dorm on the first floor, they understood that I had a phone installed, and they would just come in and shoo me away and use my phone for a while. But anyway, it's just a really fun time. And I spoke to Mike Brown, the 82-year-old now owner, but at the time his dad, Paul Brown, owned the team. And what was so incredible about that time is that, first of all, I'm living in the dorm, with the players and the coaches. I'm sleeping there most nights. I would go home, it was like an hour and 20 minutes away from my home in Cincinnati. But what was really cool about it was Paul Brown, I used to stand with him at practice, and he used to teach me about football. And it was just such a, I'm so stupid, quite honestly, to not have taken better notes, or maybe to have recorded some of the conversations I had with him and kind of that golden season. And I'll tell you one other quick story. After 1 year, I go to Newsday and to cover the New York Giants, and I'm there in 1985. I'm having a conversation one day with Mike Brown, and I told him, yeah, my dad's not doing too well. He's got cancer. He's not going to live much longer. And so later that week, a package showed up at my parents' house in Connecticut. And there was a book in there, Paul Brown's book, written with Jack Clary, basically how he did what he did as a coach, as a team architect, everything. And there was a letter in there, and he wrote a letter to my dad. He said, hey, I hear you're not doing very well. I just want to tell you that you raised a very fine boy. I worked with your son in Cincinnati. And my father, who at the time had only about 2 weeks to live, that was like, my mother said my dad just started crying. He just couldn't believe that Paul Brown knew me.
I got to ask you, Peter, I want to ask you, I haven't been on this part of the conversation very often where someone was talking football and learned football from Paul Brown. So I know you didn't write things down the way you wanted to back then, but what do you remember as the number one thing that Paul Brown taught you, that you learned about football from him, that you kind of still carry with you now?
That he was absolutely convinced, beyond the shadow of a doubt, that you learned not something, a lot from every practice. He would watch players in every practice, and he was convinced. I made a comment to him one day. I said, oh my God, because look, Wilmington, Ohio, Paul, the Midwest, hot, humid. I mean, the Bengals most days practice from 9 to 11 in the morning and 3 to 5 in the afternoon. Now, you get on the practice field in Wilmington, Ohio at 3 in the afternoon in late July and August. I'm just telling you, the average temperature is going to be 90 degrees.
Yep.
And every day this happened. And Paul Brown would be out there with his huge Panama hat on his head. He was very careful about his skin. And he would, one day I just made a comment, oh man, you've been doing this for all these years, this weather, the heat in the summer. And I said, do you ever just say, man, let's end this a little early. Let's go inside. And he looked at me very sternly and he said, young man, this is our lifeblood. And he didn't have to say anymore. He really didn't talk a lot. I would ask him questions, but he was just absolutely convinced that, if there was a practice, he was going to learn something. I remember once there was a little competition for one of the running back positions. I think, if I'm not mistaken, it was like, was it Archie Griffin? I forget who was there, but there was competition for a running back position. And he'd watch it day after day, he'd watch every carry. And one of the things he pointed out was I want to know who's going to be the best guy in the middle of the fourth quarter on a hot day. So I want to know if the practice runs from 3 to 5 and it's your second practice of the day, who's working his rear end off at 4:40. Who's still all there. That's who Paul Brown liked.
Yeah, of course.
And they've done a bunch of new things, Paul, at the stadium there, at Paul Brown Stadium. In fact, it's really crazy. His great-great-granddaughters, both, they recently graduated, I don't know, 3-4 years ago, maybe, from Dartmouth. They're twins. And they both now work for the Bengals. And one of them designed a conference room that is very heavy on team history. And it's got a lot of Paul Brown stuff in there. And it's just, you feel good about the history of the game when you know that, even though we know, look, the Bengals are not a all-powerful franchise, but they've got some interesting history. They've had some great players in the organization. And I just really enjoyed being back there, especially, I say this about teams like Cleveland, Detroit, Cincinnati to some degree, but you don't want to see any team be bad for a long time. You just don't. It's just not it's not really fair. Like, I really feel for the Detroit Lions. I mean, they've got some good people there. I think Dan Campbell's got a chance to be a good coach. And just year after year after year, there's a black cloud over their head. And it was interesting. I was talking to Kyle Shanahan, the 49ers coach, after this game on Sunday. And one of the things he said is, hey, these guys are really good. And I could tell, he said, when I was watching tape to prepare for him, he said, I got home, they had lost ugly in week 13 on the road at Seattle. And he came home and he said, I was really ticked off. I couldn't sleep. So I just said, let me put on the Bengals-Chargers game. I don't really know Burrow that well. Let's put on the tape and watch that. And he goes, after I finished watching Burrow, I really couldn't sleep. And because I just said, my God, this guy is really something. And you saw that in the game on Sunday, Paul. I don't know how much of the fourth quarter you saw, but Joe Burrow basically said to his team, guys, get on my back. We're winning this game. And they didn't win the game, but you just felt that. He made a couple of great throws.
Yeah.
One trolling the back of the end zone where, Jamar Chase, Jamar Chase was trolling the end line of the end zone going to the left, and Burrow actually threw it a little bit behind him. And it was almost like the old classic back shoulder fade that, sometimes the receiver will wonder, oh my God, he underthrew me. Duh, I underthrew you on purpose. And this particular throw, he threw it behind him on purpose because he knew that he was going to had the chance to be throwing into coverage if he actually led Chase on that play. Paul, I'm going to ask you a totally open-ended question. Give me from the eye of, a former quarterback at a high level in the Big Ten, give me your little early review of Joe Burrow.
I've loved watching him play since we were studying him. I think it was a year and a half now, Peter, coming out of LSU. And I didn't really keep that close an eye on him at LSU. I was fully aware of how well they were throwing the ball and the kind of numbers he was putting up. And I never really watched him until it became draft season. And I tell you what really stood out then. Numbers are great, receivers are great, but the one thing was, if there was a stat to track, ball went to the right place and it went there accurately. I mean, I think it would have been above 90%. I know it's not an official number, but it was amazing how often he would diagnose the play, go to the right place, and the ball was accurate. It was time and time and time again. So now fast forward to last season and also what we're seeing now. They're not playing Kentucky and Ole Miss anymore, so it doesn't happen quite as often. But from his first game, you could see that in the NFL. The difficulty of that transition didn't erase that strength of his game. I think it's still around. And if you're ever watching him now, and I know you're just at the game, but if you're watching him again in a full game, right read, accurate throw, it happens a lot for a kid with that kind of experience. So that's number one. I love that when he was at LSU, and I like how it's translated now, early point in his career. Next thing, and I go back to the draft, this term we hear a lot, Peter, arm talent. All these kids got great arm talent. I think when you watch him, you can really peel off the layers of the onion there. And to me, that means like I watch him throw a quick slant, and it's not all speed and arm strength. It's the right pace. He makes it so it's easy for the receiver to catch. If he's throwing a post corner, it's not driven, but it's not like a balloon either. And when he's throwing that deep ball, he can turn it over like a punter and just drop it in there. So you can say a kid has arm talent. Watch Joe Burrow for a couple of games at a time, and the number of different kind of throws he makes that have the right kind of pace on them. His arm talent's really good. And I like that I can attach details to that cliche term that's thrown around all the time. So a long way of saying I'm really encouraged by what he's done this last season and a half.
So Paul, the last thing I'd tell you about, being in Cincinnati over the weekend and watching that game, at least from the Bengals standpoint, and then I want to get into 149ers thing. We're talking about Joe Burrow. We're talking about this great throw he made to Jamar Chase. I'm going to tell you the situation that throw happened in. There's 9.5 minutes left in the game. Bengals are down 20-6. They haven't done anything good consistently on offense the whole game. Burrow is getting hit a lot. Bosa's living in the backfield. And so this was with 9.5 minutes left. They're down 20-6. This is 4th and 5. And Zach Taylor said, we're not going for the field goal. I don't know that we're going to get 2 more shots at it. We probably will, but I don't know that. We'll at least get 1, but I don't know about 2. So anyway, it's 4th and 5. And he runs all over creation. And finally, the scramble drill, he gets Jamar Chase in the back of the end zone and he completes it. And what was amazing is that if you look at that particular throw, he threw that ball around 32 yards in the air to a target that was not leading the receiver. And it looked for a minute like it was a bad pass. And Chase basically turned around and caught it, touchdown. But I remember watching the Alabama game against LSU when Burrow had his great year at LSU. And I remember thinking how amazing it was that on the first throw of the game and on the second throw of the game, Burrow went downfield. He didn't he didn't just dink and dunk and everything. And, because a lot of coaches say, well, I want to get my quarterback some confidence early. And I asked Joe Brady about that at the time because I was doing a story on Burrow before the draft. I asked Joe Brady, and he goes, that's laughable. We never one time had to call a play to, quote, give Joe confidence. He already was brimming with confidence, and he didn't need that before any game. And I always think of that when I think about Burrow making a gigantic throw on 4th and 5 with the game on the line that is just perfect.
I remember when I was watching him getting ready for the draft, I already talked about with you, Peter, but one of the things I wrote down, as I went back through my notes here today, I wrote down multiple times, never afraid. This kid isn't afraid. And then I was reading your article this afternoon, Football Morning America, and I believe you had quoted from Mike Brown that he said, and I don't remember the exact words leading up to it or after it, but I think he said that. He said he's not afraid. He's not afraid of anything. And it's one thing to say that Monday through Saturday, I'm not afraid of these guys. It's another thing to stand in the pocket on 4th down, like 4th and 5, like you talked about. It came to my mind when I was watching earlier in that game-tying drive. He dropped back, and I think his first completion on that drive, he had his feet set in his own end zone. I mean, he didn't look afraid a single bit, and he never does. And, I don't want to paint the picture this is a perfect quarterback. I mean, I went back through his numbers today. I think he has 4 games this year with multiple interceptions. So, and they've lost all 4 of those games. So there are a number of things he needs to do better, but the certain intangible things, not being afraid and having that kind of a courage and having it show up during the game, again, pretty fun to watch.
You're actually talking about the last touchdown drive that he had, which Bosa sacked him back to the Cincinnati 5.
Right.
And it's 2nd and 18 at his own 5-yard line. And 6 plays later, it's a touchdown. They almost scored too early, because they did give the 49ers, a chance to win it at the end, but they missed on the Robbie Gould field goal. Paul, I want to ask you one question about the 49ers, and it's about George Kittle. The last 2 weeks, I've noticed this because I watched a lot of the Seattle game last week. And this game this week, I really think that an offensive player, is special when the opposition knows he's getting the ball. I mean, I think I'm right in saying 15 targets against the Bengals, 13 completions, Garoppolo to Kittle. The defense knows he's getting the ball. They can't stop it.
Right.
And Kittle made some fabulous catches. The one catch that was over Von Bell where he kind of climbed the ladder. And as I wrote, it was like he went up against LeBron James and snared the rebound somehow. I've always been an admirer of Kittle, and he's getting a little bit nicked up as the years go on.
Yeah.
Even though he's still fairly early in his career, but like he got nicked up. He strained a calf yesterday, and you could see he was limping on the sidelines. And then he would just come out and make more big plays. And I just said to myself, this guy is worth his weight in gold.
Absolutely. 100% is. And it reminds me of watching Aaron Rodgers with Devontae Adams. And I know it's a different level quarterback. It's a different position, different kind of pass catcher. But it's the same thing, Peter, in the sense that you know where the ball's going. You know where that quarterback's looking. And it's a tremendous compliment to everybody involved that they still make it happen. A couple things come to mind. Number one, when you watch Kittle, watch how many times he lines up in a different spot, whether it's as a fullback, as a wide receiver, as an attached tight end, as a tight end maybe 2 yards outside the tackle. Tremendous credit to his athleticism and to Kyle Shanahan for all the ways he finds to use him. And I don't want to say hide him, Peter, because everybody knows they're looking for him, but got to look at a different place for him all the time. So it's his athleticism. It's Kyle Shanahan's excellent use of formations and motions. And I think we need to give more credit than we do to Jimmy Garoppolo. I'm not putting him in the Pro Bowl, but he has had a good year. And let's not forget how difficult it must have been emotionally and mentally for him. And they had a bad stretch during the middle of it. I think he has played really, really well. So when we think about Kittle doing all those things and Shanahan helping him so much, let's not forget about the quarterback who's doing pretty well also.
I want to read you what Shanahan told me after the game about Jimmy Garoppolo. It's sort of a long quote, but it's interesting, and it's gotten some attention in the Bay Area in the last 24 hours. And because I just asked him an open-ended question hour or so after the game, I spent 10 or 15 minutes with him. I said to him, just open-ended question. How's Jimmy handled what is a difficult situation, no matter what anybody would call it? And I'll read this to you. Jimmy's one of the favorite people that I've ever coached. He's a hell of a dude. He's not trying to hide anything. I don't want to downplay it and say this whole situation is not a big deal. It's a huge deal. It's really hard on him. But he came in with the right mindset all the way back to OTAs. He hasn't gotten sideways at all through any of it. No matter what he hears, he's been the exact same guy I've known the 4 years prior. And that has given us a chance to fight through this year. It's given us the chance to be at where we're at right now. And I thought that was a ringing endorsement for Garoppolo. And, we can make a list of where he belongs in the quarterback list and all that stuff. But I'll just say this one thing about Garoppolo, and I'll quote Kyle Shanahan. He's a hell of a dude. To deal with this the way he has, the crushing disappointment. Hey, a couple of years ago, we gave you this gigantic contract, and now we're drafting your replacement. And I will always believe that they're drafting his replacement at least half the reason is can't stay on the field. And look, early in his career, Phil Simms had the exact same thing. He was injured, not in a major way, but injured and missed time in 4 of his first 5 years in the NFL. And everybody said, oh, Phil Simms, injury prone. Well, Phil Simms, turned out to be, relatively speaking, for the last 2/3 of his NFL life, an absolute Iron Man. But, that's the tag you're going to get. But I agree with you. I think Jimmy is really, really something. Paul, I want to hit on 3 things in the time we have left. I want to know, and I should have asked you this when we were talking about the Bills. Okay, so I didn't watch much of the game. I saw the highlights, and I saw the non-pass interference call on Stephon Diggs when it looked like he was getting mugged. And the internet was filled Sunday night and still all day Monday about how, they're protecting the Super Bowl champs, and the Bills didn't get a fair run from the officials. You watched the game. What did you think of the non-calls that the Bills were so upset about?
I think the one that they're mostly concerned about, Peter, is the one you mentioned, Stephon Diggs. If it was late in the game or it was overtime, I forget, but I can picture it on the TV, bottom left. I think that is a no call. I know right now that you see that and you expect 9 times out of 10 or even 10 times out of 10 for the flag to be thrown. But I think at that point in the game, it's 2 guys battling and their hands end up on each other. And to me, that's okay. That's part of football. It's part of the balls in the air. And there's going to be a little contact. I like that wasn't called. It stands out because it's called so often now, so almost automatically, that fans and teams, I guess rightfully so, because of the recent history, are wondering why wasn't that called? But I don't think that kind of play where both the DB and the receiver have their hands on each other, if they're not really ripping or tearing down or affecting, it's late in the game, it's tight. I don't mind that call being let go.
Okay.
The one that got called late, I think it was against Mike Evans. Something's got to be done, Peter, about this flag that's, again, automatically thrown when the DB doesn't get his head around, because it's man coverage. Quarterback throws some version of a back shoulder fade or kind of like a mini fade route. And before he even has a chance to get his head around, the ball's on top of him. He wasn't interfering with Mike Evans. He didn't have his head turned around. So by the letter of the law, I guess it's interference, but he didn't really grab the receiver or make it impossible for him to catch the ball. He just didn't have his head turned, and they were like basically fastened to each other by the time the ball got there. I don't like that call at all. I understand why it was called, because it's called all the time, but it's too easy for the offense to pick up the first down and the yardage when the DB didn't really interfere. He just didn't get his head around.
Yeah, that's very interesting. Paul, one of the premises of my trip to Cincinnati was to sort of cover a game with the 2021 NFL middle class. And there are so many teams in this middle class right now that are still in playoff contention. And that, to me, was so interesting, to sort of start to look into that topic a little bit about why 24 teams, here we are with, as the calendar goes, less than a month before the end of the regular season, 24 teams are legit still in the playoff hunt. 75% of the league, has 6 wins or more. And I'm curious. I think it might be a coincidence. I'm not sure. You have any theories about why we're seeing such an even brand of football in 2021.
I'm going to stay true to kind of a version of what I've been talking about when we've kind of touched on this topic the last 3 months here, Peter. I guess really the last couple months, as it's become clear that there are a lot of teams in the middle, is that I'm going to look at it from the quarterback's point of view. There are so many quarterbacks right now that belong ranked between, let's say, 10 and 15. Yeah. I could give you a dozen to 14 quarterbacks. I could make a legitimate argument that should be rated in there. And that, I mean, on one hand, Peter, there's nothing new about we get to mid-December and there's a handful of teams with a handful of decent quarterbacks who might be in the postseason. They might not be, but we need 3 hands to count those number of teams this year. And to me, the way I look at the game, it's because there are so many B to B minus quarterbacks. And I mean that more as a compliment than a put down. There are a lot of decent quarterbacks in the game right now. And that's why there are nearly half of the teams in the NFL, to me, have 6 or 7 wins. And, go back and look at it. It's a wide range. I mean, from Jalen Hurts to Matt Ryan, from Taylor Heineke to Teddy Bridgewater. You're not going to put those guys, you're not going to draft them in the first round again. You're not going to have them in the Pro Bowl. They're doing more good than bad. And there are so many quarterbacks in that category right now. That's why I think that there are, more than half of the teams in the league are battling to be in the postseason and have a legitimate chance to think that they can be.
Yeah. I think that's interesting. I don't really know whether and I like that thought that the quality of quarterbacking is narrowing the gap between, look, the Bengals are now a threat because of Joe Burrow, and even the teams where you look at him and you say, man, he's not a top 10 quarterback, the 49ers. I mean, Kyle Shanahan said something interesting to me after the game. He said, Peter, look up and I don't know that I'm going to do this. It would take 2 hours, but I might look up all the games, since I've been coach here. We have an incredible record when we have 0 turnovers. The only thing that I am thinking when he says that is, I bet most teams have an incredible record when they have no turnovers. I'm not positive, but I would guess that stat in a vacuum, if they've won 85% of their games where they don't turn it over, I'm not sure that's going to be different from, let's say, Seattle or whatever. I do want to make one point, and actually it's Trent Williams of the 49ers made it to me. And it's the one thing in asking a bunch of people around football why they think that it's so even today. Trent Williams said, I'll just tell you what I've noticed. Until Trent Williams was drafted in 2010. He came in, and by the way, in the Tim Tebow, Demaryius Thomas draft. I think in that round, yeah. But he said to me, what to me is the real difference in football from when I started to now is that when you bring rookies in, man, they're ready to play right away. And that is a really prescient, I think, smart comment. I'm not positive that it's true, but I do think that teams are taking rookies from the first day of training camp. And I'll never forget, I was at the Cowboys in week 1 of training camp. And Mike McCarthy is not usually like this, but I said, hey, give me some observations about your team. And he goes, I'm telling you, Micah Parsons has earned a role on day 1 with our team. I said, it's still July. You know already that Micah Parsons is going to, he said, Peter, he makes a play in practice every day that just totally tilts the field toward the defense. And so my only point is that I think coaches, even coaches maybe who traditionally have been a little bit stubborn about playing young players, now they've kind of thrown that out the window. And they say, I'm playing the best guy. I don't care if he is 21 years old. And I don't know if you've seen that or noticed it, but I just wanted to throw that out to you.
Absolutely. It hasn't come to my mind like when you sent the list of things you wanted to discuss today. I didn't think of that as one of the things, but like every team has not only, I don't want to say every team, a lot of teams had not only their first round pick big names, but middle round guys that show up. I mean, San Francisco's running game, I mean, it comes to mind. I believe it's Mitchell is the running back, I think.
Elijah Mitchell, yeah.
Yeah. Looks the part. I mean, mid-round guy, relatively kind of a no-name kind of a guy coming into the league. There are those kind of players everywhere. And just thinking about it in this moment, Peter, those kids they don't come into the NFL afraid. And, maybe they should come in with a little more intimidation, but I think more and more, I mean, they went to college expecting to be in the NFL. They get to OTAs and they carry that with them. So I think that attitude, that bravado that they bring with them, no matter if they're a first-round pick or a sixth-round pick, a lot of those guys are expecting to be there, and they kind of perform that way.
I mean, it's all interesting, and I think you have to see it for more than 1 year before you make any definitive judgment. But I'm just interested in watching now, and I'll be watching this the rest of the year. I'm just really interested in watching how close it is, and whether this might be a trend that continues into next year. So we'll see.
Hi, I'm Mike Tirico, and thanks for watching. Make sure to hit subscribe for the latest news and highlights from NBC Sports.